was as though even in this noughts profound, even in this ultimate dissolution's core, there lurked an unremembering entity, survivor of a slain and buried past, condemned to resume the effort and the pang, reviving in another frustrate world. There's so much in these lines, you see. Beginning with this first line, even in this noughts profound, Sri Aurobindo never uses N-A-U-G-H-T. He always uses N-O-U-G-H-T. That was his preference. So we see that even in this noughts profound and this ultimate core of dissolution, something was there. An unremembering entity lurked there. And this entity was, strangely, the survivor of a slain and buried past. Now, what does that mean? To me, it means that there were these pralayas before this present creation. And this unremembering entity, who was the survivor of this slain and buried past, again was condemned to resume the effort and the pang, reviving in another frustrate world. So we know that there were 6 pralayas, and Mother said there would never be a 7th because of the supramental. It would prevent worldwide destruction. To our eyes, it seems that it's not so sure with all the wars we're facing and all the falsehoods, the power grabbing of the elite, but it won't happen. The supramental will prevent it. So now again, Sri Aurobindo is going to continue and tell us that an unshaped consciousness desired light, and a blank prescience yearned towards distant change. Well, this unshaped consciousness is, of course, the appearance of this initial creation. And this blank prescience, this prescience that has no foreknowledge, no foresight, nothing to do with events before they occur, still, it yearned towards distant change. Very, very interesting. And then Sri Aurobindo gives us this marvelous, marvelous few lines. As if a childlike finger laid on a cheek, reminded of the endless need in things, the heedless mother of the universe, an infant longing clutched the somber vast. So we have to read that properly, because we might say that we wanted a parenthetical phrase there, reminded of the endless need in things. But it's not needed, because it's the childlike finger, as if. Sri Aurobindo so often uses as if. He doesn't tell us this is the way it is. He says as if, giving us a hint, as if a childlike finger laid on the cheek, an infant longing clutched the somber vast. And in between we have, reminded of the endless need in things, the heedless mother of the universe. The heedless mother of the universe here is actually the Shakti, the creatrix, But we're not referring yet to the Divine Mother. But whenever Sri Aurobindo capitalizes something, it is the essence of the thing. So I want to share with you some very important letters and writings from Sri Aurobindo on the Mother of the universe. In the book, The Mother, he says, the one whom we adore as the Mother is the divine conscious force that dominates all existence. One and yet so many-sided that to follow her movement is impossible, even for the quickest mind and for the freest and most vast intelligence. The Mother is the consciousness and force of the Supreme, and far above all she creates. The Mother comes in order to bring down the supermental. And it is the descent which makes her full manifestation here possible. From his letters on yoga. When one does sadhana, the inner consciousness begins to open, and one is able to go inside and have all kinds of experiences there. As the sadhana progresses, one begins to live more and more in this inner being. And the outer becomes more and more superficial. At first, the inner consciousness seems to be the dream, and the outer, the waking reality. Afterwards, the inner consciousness becomes the reality, and the outer is felt by many as a dream or delusion, or else as something superficial and external. The inner consciousness begins to be a place of deep peace, light, happiness, love, closeness to the divine, or the presence of the divine, the Mother. Now, when people feel this outer world of the ignorance as a dream or delusion, it is much as Buddha felt. And he retired into the divine and left this world alone. But I am told by some sages that on his leaving, he turned around and with deep, deep compassion looked upon the world. Now, Buddhism doesn't tell us that, but that seems to be what Buddha did. So we have now here this infant longing that clutched the somber vast. And what happens next? Insensibly somewhere, a breach began, a breach breaking through. And insensibly unaware, unconscious, inanimate, unresponsive. And there's a colon after began. Because Sri Aurobindo wants us to know the power of these next three lines. A long, long line of hesitating hues, like a vague smile tempting a desert heart, troubled the far rim of life's obscure sleep. So we have first that beautiful alliteration, long, long line. We see this alliteration in so many great poets. Edgar Allan Poe uses it in some of his finest poetry, uses it extensively. And we have to stop here a moment and see what Sri Aurobindo studied in England, because he became a master of poetry. And he even wrote to Amal Kiran that he was more of a poet than a yogi. Amazing. And so he studied all the greatest poets. And even when he came back to India and settled in Pondicherry, Amal Kiran told me he sent him a book of Palgrave's poetry, collection of poetry. So Sri Aurobindo knew the poetry of Goethe in German. He knew the poetry of Virgil in Latin. He knew the poetry of Dante in Italian. He knew the poetry of Milton in English. It's extraordinary. So when we begin to go deeply into Savitri, we have to understand that Sri Aurobindo was a master of all words and language. He even had to learn Sanskrit here because his father prohibited him from learning any other language other than English when he was in England. Now what happens? Arrived from the other side of boundlessness, an eye of deity peered through the dumb deeps. Not pierced, but peered. So this eye of deity is looking through the dumb deeps because he's just arrived from the other side of boundlessness. Boundlessness, there are no bounds, there are no limits. It's infinite. And what is he actually? He is a scout in a reconnaissance from the sun. Now this reconnaissance is this exploration of an area to gather information. And so this sun is not our sun. It is the sun that illumines our earthly sun. It seemed, amid a heavy cosmic rest, the torpor of a sick and weary world, to seek for a spirit, soul, and desolate, too fallen to recollect forgotten bliss. He could be speaking of our world today. The torpor, this inactive state of a hibernating world, mentally, physically inactive or insensible. The torpor of a sick and weary world. And what is he looking for? To seek for a spirit, soul and desolate, too fallen to recollect forgotten bliss. Now we just had a little line previously that told us that there was a creation before this. And now this spirit that is alone and desolate and is too fallen to recollect this bliss that it's forgotten, this scout in the reconnaissance from the sun is seeing it. Now, intervening in a mindless universe, its message crept through the reluctant hush, calling the adventure of consciousness and joy. Well, that last line, of course, is the book, the title of the book that Satsang wrote. And Mother said, Sri Aurobindo was standing right in back of him as he wrote the book. So this scout is intervening in this universe that is mindless. And yet, his message crept through this reluctant hush, calling the adventure of consciousness and joy. So we're on page 3 now. And conquering nature's disillusioned press, compelled renewed consent to see and feel. So, nature here is capitalized, and nature is disillusioned because of all the seemingly insoluble problems of creation. And yet, she is now compelled and renewed her consent to see and feel. Now, after that, it's very important because a thought was sown in the unsounded void. Now, Sri Aurobindo tells us that void is emptiness clear of all contents except existence, pure and simple. Because he says without that, one cannot realize the silent Brahma. And in another letter on yoga, he says, the void is the condition of the self, capital S, free, wide, and silent. It seems void to the mind, but in reality, it is simply a state of pure existence and consciousness. Sat and Chit with Shanti. So important for us to understand that this thought was sown in this unsounded void. And now there are more things. That's just one. The next one, a sense was born within the darkness depths. Another one, a memory quivered in the heart of time. As if, again we get the as if a soul long dead were moved to live. Colon. But the oblivion that succeeds the fall had blotted the crowded tablets of the past. And all that was destroyed must be rebuilt, and old experience labored out once more. So we see that these tablets of the past, these laws, have been blotted by this oblivion that succeeds the fall. And when this creation collapses, obviously there's an oblivion. And obviously the crowded tablets of the past are blotted out. Therefore, and all that was destroyed must be rebuilt. We must rebuild again the consciousness of the world. But then he says one more thing. And old experience labored out once more. And why does he say that? Because all of us have been born and died many, many times over. Many times. And so we have old experience, but it has to be labored out once more into a new experience. And then this great line, all can be done if the God touch is there. Now, he hyphenates God touch. So it's not God and touch, but it becomes one word, God touch. So if that touch of God touches us, all can be done. Full stop. A hope so new that hardly dared to be amid the night's forlorn indifference. Forlorn is sad or lonely, feeling deserted or abandoned, forsaken, deprived. So this hope steals in. It hardly even dares to be amid this indifference of the night. And remember, we are in the first book, and the night is still overpowering. Now he takes us into something new. As if solicited in an alien world, with timid and hazardous instinctive grace, orphaned and driven out to seek a home, an errant marvel with no place to live, into a far-off nook of heaven there came a slow, miraculous gesture's dim appeal. This is very, very deep. Solicited, entreated, petitioned, importuned, asked earnestly or persistently. So, as if solicited in an alien world, well, it certainly seems to be alien, unknown, with timid and hazardous instinctive grace. So the grace is also timid and hazardous. But this orphaned and driven out to seek a home has to go into the next line. An errant marvel who is orphaned and driven out to seek a home and has no place to live. So, as if solicited in an alien world, with timid and hazardous instinctive grace, orphaned and driven out to seek a home, an errant marvel with no place to live, into a far-off nook of heaven, a little spot of heaven. There came, and what came? A slow, miraculous gesture's dim appeal. Oh, this is so beautiful. What is this appeal? The persistent thrill of a transfiguring touch persuaded the inert black quietude and beauty and wonder disturbed the fields of God. It's a persistent thrill that comes of a touch that has the power of transfiguration. And it persuades the inert black quietude. This quietude is the state of being at rest, stillness, calmness, tranquility. So it's still a black quietude because we're still in Book 1, Canto 1, and the night is predominating. So this persistent thrill of a transfiguring touch persuaded the inert black quietude of this marvelous light. And beauty and wonder disturbed the fields of God. And I'll read just a little more because our time is almost up. A wandering hand of pale, enchanted light that glowed along a fading moment's brink, fixed with gold panel and opalescent hinge, a gate of dreams, ajar on mystery's verge. Little complex, but we go through. So we have a wandering hand. It's pale light, but it's enchanting. And it's glowing along this brink of a fading moment. It is fixed with gold panel and opalescent hinge. Opalescent is that milky iridescence, like an opal. And what did it do? It fixed a gate of dreams. But it's ajar on mystery's verge. It's not fixed fully yet. It's still ajar on mystery's verge. One lucent corner, windowing hidden things. Beautiful line. Windowing, opening out like a window. And yet it's a lucent corner, very clear. What did it do? Force the world's blind immensity to sight. The darkness failed and slipped like a falling cloak from the reclining body of a god. So here we see for the first time that the darkness is fading. And it's even slipping off. A beautiful image here, like a falling cloak from the reclining body of a god. So I will ask Rani today to read the passage we've just gone through. And at the end of her reading, let's have a few moments of silence and then sing Om together. Yes. No. You see, the darkness is failing. It's going because there's some light that's starting to come down. And it slips. The image is so beautiful. If a god throws off his cloak when he's lying down, the reclining body of a god. So it's an image that Sri Aurobindo is giving us. The darkness is slipping away. And it's sort of like a falling cloak that falls off from the sleeping body of a god, reclining at least body of the god. Sorry. You have to speak louder for me. have to go back to some lines. You have to see that this persistent thrill of a transfiguring touch persuaded the inert black quietude. Still dark, but this slow, miraculous gesture of dim appeal came from this far-off nook of heaven. And therefore, beauty and wonder disturbed the fields of God. So now we have this wandering hand, but it's a hand of pale, enchanted light. And it's fixed with all of these things, gold panel, opalescent ink. And it's a gate of dreams. It's ajar, open on mystery's verge. And yet, it's one lucent corner, windowing hidden things, which allows force the world's blind immensity to sight. So there's some light trickling through. It's not sun yet. We have a lot more to go. But the darkness has failed a bit. And it slipped off like the falling cloak in the reclining body. I'll read through more lines, might help you. Then through the pallid rift that seemed at first hardly enough for a trickle from the suns, outpoured the revelation and the flame. When something is pallid, it's lacking in vitality. And a rift is a fissure, a cleft. So then through the pallid rift that seemed at first hardly enough for a trickle from the suns, the revelation and the flame outpoured. And much more is going to happen